For the last few weeks, we've been talking about Judges. The story we're going to be talking about today happens at the exact same time as the Judges, but it's in a different book of the Bible. It starts with a famine in the land of Judea, and so a man named Elimelech and his wife Naomi and their 2 sons moved to the land of Moab. Her 2 sons get married to Moabite women, and then her husband and 2 sons pass away. And so she is left in a foreign land of Moab with her 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth. Now Naomi hears that the famine is over in Judea, and so she wants to return to her country. And so she tells Orpah and Ruth that she's going to leave, but that they can stay here and stay with their families. And so Orpah says okay, and she returns to stay with her family. But Ruth says, please don't make me leave you. I want to stay with you. And so Holland is going to read for us one of the most famous passages in Ruth. It is Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 through 17.
But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you."
So as you can see from that passage, Ruth begs Naomi to stay with her, and so Naomi lets her go with her, and they return to Bethlehem. When they get there, Ruth asks her mother-in-law Naomi if she can go gleaning in the fields, and that's where a poor person would follow along behind the harvesters and pick up what they've left, like scattered on the ground. And so Naomi says, yes, go glean in the field. May you find favor there. And so Ruth goes, and she happens to come across a field of a man named Boaz. Now, I want to pause the story right here, and I want us to read something about gleaning, and then I want to talk a little bit about it. So let's read Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 through 10.
When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God.
I think gleaning is a very interesting practice. It's something that the Lord put in place for his people so that they could look after the poor or the foreigners among them. I think it's something that we could put into practice today. How do you ask? We don't have fields, and most of us, and so it's not something that we could just leave things laying on the ground and expect that poor people would come and pick it up, or people that need it would come pick it up. But we do have our lives, our time, our schedules, and our money. And I believe that we should not live to the edges. Like if you spend every amount, all the money that you have, you don't have any to give to people who might need it. Or if you schedule every single moment of your day, you don't have time to give to people who might need it. So I want you guys to consider this week how you can put into practice allowing people to glean from you. Be open to people. Keep your heart and your emotions open to people. Keep your schedule open to people. Keep your wallets open to people that need it from you. So that's an aside about gleaning. So Ruth asked Naomi, can I go gleaning? And Naomi says yes. And then it says that Ruth happened on the field of Boaz. And we know that she didn't just happen, because the Lord was leading her to Boaz, and we'll see why at the end of the story. So Boaz sees her, and he says, who is this lady? And someone says, she is a widow and a foreigner that came back with Naomi. And so Boaz comes to her, and he is very kind to her. So let's see what he says in Ruth chapter 2, verses 8 through 12. Then Boaz said to Ruth, now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother in your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward will be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Boaz tells Ruth, "Stay in my field and gather with my workers, and if there's water to drink, drink it." He's making it easy on her. He's taking care of her, and he's also told all of his men to leave her alone. Like, don't mess with her. Don't pick on her. He also goes later and tells his people to leave extra on the ground for her, so that where she's gleaning, just drop a few extra pieces so that she can have it. And if she picks from the stalks, which gleaners are supposed to just get the stuff on the ground, but if she picks from the stalks, don't bother her. Don't tell her not to do it. Let her do it. And so he is taking extra good care of her. This may be a weird part of the story, but hang with me here. At that time, if a man died before he had kids, then one of his relatives would take care of his wife by marrying her. Now, this was for several reasons. A lot of times people didn't want to marry women who had already been married, and so that was something to help take care of them, was that a relative would marry them. But also because of inheritance and land that passed down through generations, the land needed to stay with the same family, and so the land would pass from one relative to another, and with the land came the wife. So Boaz was one of Ruth's husband's relatives, and there were two that were relatively close relatives. And so Boaz went to talk to the other relative and said, "Do you want to redeem this field?" So this was the land that belonged to Ruth's husband. "Do you want to redeem this?" And the man's like, yeah, I'll buy that so that it can be mine. And Boaz says, if you buy it, you'll also get the Moabite woman Ruth, because she was his wife. And he's like, "Oh no, I can't do that." Because if Ruth has a son, then that son would get the land, and so it wouldn't be the inheritance of that man's kids, it would be the inheritance of Ruth's first husband's kids. Complicated. Anyway, the man says, "No, I can't do this. I can't redeem that. I can't redeem the land because I can't marry Ruth." And so Boaz says, "Well, I will do it." And so he redeems, or buys back, is what that word means, Ruth. And so she goes from a foreigner and a widow to becoming a wife and a mother. And at the end of the book, it says that she had a son named Obed, who had a son named Jesse, who had a son named David. And David was one of the most famous kings in all of Israel's history. And so this poor Moabite or foreign widow becomes a cared for wife and ancestor of the most famous king, David, and ancestor of Jesus. And so Boaz redeemed Ruth in just the same way that, or even more, in a more powerful way, way more powerful way than Boaz redeems Ruth, Jesus redeems us. He can redeem our past, our present, and our future. In fact, he's already paid the price to redeem us. Maybe you have a past where you think, because of that, your identity is something other than the Lord's. Maybe something in your past has caused you to be tempted to identify yourself as something not of the Lord, like unloved, or unwanted, or victim, or misunderstood. There are so many things that we can let that identity get into us that is not from the Lord. But God has paid the price to redeem you from that. You no longer have to be unloved or unwanted or misunderstood. Jesus can redeem that. He is redeeming that if you will allow him. He can redeem the things from your past that make you question your identity. He can redeem the things from the present that are making you question your identity right now. And redeeming those two things, the past and the present, can redeem your future. Please allow God to redeem you. If you are struggling right now and you don't know what your identity is, know that the Lord loves you. Know that you are loved. That is your identity, loved by the Lord. And if you believe in Jesus, your identity is child of God. Please let the Lord redeem you and redeem your life.